The thermal readouts glowed a steady 37 degrees Celsius, but the neural cortex map was entirely dark. Commander Veltharison tapped the primary calibration node on his console. Once, twice, a third time. He was exactly 3 days into his directorship at Sublevel 9, and the detention station's biometric sensors were already failing. The corridor beyond his observation window held 40 high-security containment fields, 39 of them empty. Carbon scrubbers cycled the atmosphere with a low, abrasive hum specifically calibrated to induce auditory distress in non-compliant species. Inside Cell 40 sat Isla Dren, human, captured near the outer border colonies. Earth occupation listed simply as Beekeeper. She sat cross-legged on the polished composite floor, completely unaffected by the sonic pressure. Her right thumb absent-mindedly traced a pale, jagged line of raised tissue across her left forearm. A scar. The intake files noted it had healed without any synthetic grafting or medical intervention. Her biology had simply woven the skin back together on its own. I need to be honest with you. The events of that cycle forced our military intelligence division to permanently restrict an entire subsector of biological data. The automated interrogation protocol had been running for 6 continuous hours. Flashing strobes illuminated the cell. Sudden drops in atmospheric pressure tested her lung capacity. Demands for fleet coordinates blared from directional speakers at irregular intervals. Isla did not answer. She barely blinked. Eventually, she shifted her weight on the unforgiving floor, pulled her scarred arm up, and tucked it awkwardly beneath her head like a makeshift cushion. A long, heavy exhale left her lungs. Then, the main console flared a harsh warning amber. Sohn leaned forward, his ocular ridges drawing tight against his skull. The human's metabolic rate was plummeting in real time. Her respiratory cycle slowed to a crawl. Heartbeats stretched into sluggish, unnatural intervals. A second later, the primary cognitive indicator vanished. Conscious brain activity ceased. "Sir, the prisoner's neural functions have terminated," the guard, Kale, reported. His hands hovered directly over the emergency weapons lock. "She has initiated a biological shutdown." "Did she ingest a localized toxin during transit?" Sohn asked, striking the calibration node again. Which meant the readings were wrong. They had to be negative. No chemical anomalies. Her core temperature remains strictly optimal, but her voluntary motor systems are completely paralyzed. Sohn stared through the reinforced observation glass. The human lay perfectly limp. To a Torveshi, absolute stillness meant only one thing: the loading phase. On his homeworld, apex predators only dropped their vital signs to mask their thermal signatures just before an explosive, devastating strike. The human was feigning death. She was storing kinetic energy, preparing to breach the barrier. "Enhance the containment grid," Sohn ordered, his voice tight. "Double the frequency. Divert auxiliary power to the kinetic dampeners." "Grid enhanced," Kale confirmed. "Sir, she is entirely unresponsive. Should I initiate medical retrieval?" "Absolutely not. If you drop that field, she will tear you apart." The hum of the cell pitched into a sharp, vibrating whine. The thickened blue energy matrix cast rigid shadows across Isla's slack face. She looked utterly defenseless. To Sohn, that calculated vulnerability was the most terrifying tactic he had ever witnessed. He kept his eyes locked on the slow rise and fall of her chest, waiting for the inevitable explosion of violence, counting the seconds as the silent station waited for the predator to spring. 2 hours passed. The anticipated kinetic detonation never materialized. The reinforced cell remained entirely silent. Sohn authorized a microscan of her muscular system. He expected to find microscopic tears, the physical hallmark of rapid energy compression. Except there was no compression. Zero tension registered across her entire form. Kale's mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a clear sign of rising panic. as he escalated the local alarm to the planetary defense grid. Fleet Command immediately began demanding updates on the lockdown anomaly. Down in the cell, the human shifted her weight against the cold floor. She smacked her dry lips together, let out a soft, rhythmic snort, and lazily scratched the bridge of her nose before settling her cheek back against her arm. Chief Medical Officer Valens slammed through the doors, tossing a physical data pad onto the console. "Cancel the red alert, Commander. I accessed the terrestrial archives. She isn't preparing a strike." Valen pointed a trembling digit at the flatlined cognitive feed. "It is a biological cycle called sleep. Humans voluntarily sever their conscious minds from their physical forms for roughly 8 hours every planetary rotation. Complete paralysis. Zero defensive capability. On a Class 12 Deathworld where numerous apex predators hunt exclusively under the cover of darkness, including venomous reptiles and massive felines, this species completely shuts down their awareness. They evolved to do this, and they survive." Sohn stared at the glowing pad. His foundational predatory logic evaporated. She wasn't a weapon gathering energy for an explosive breach. She was merely resting. He looked through the reinforced glass at Isla Dren, an Earth beekeeper. At 14 standard years of age, she had torn her flesh open on rusted wire. She had bled on a hostile, predator-dense world. When the sun set, she had simply closed her eyes in the dark and trusted herself to wake up. The sheer arrogance of that biology made his respiratory vents lock shut. He opened his command terminal. The escalation was irreversible now. He forwarded the new biological data to Fleet Command, formally reclassifying humans from a minimal threat to an apex anomaly. Sohn then drafted his official resignation. He cited severe inadequacy in comprehending Deathworld psychology. At the 8th hour, the human stirred. She stretched her arms above her head, popping her spinal column loudly enough for the external mics to catch. Isla blinked against the harsh strobes. She rubbed her eyes and looked directly at the observation window. The pale barbed wire scar stretched taut over her flexed muscle. She tapped the reinforced glass twice. She mimed raising a spoon to her mouth,